Hi, this is Kip from The Pains of Being Pure at Heart, and you are watching Fun Room. Blocking my light. I'd played in bands for like a really long time when I lived in Portland, Oregon, and nothing really came of them. And it wasn't through lack of trying and rehearsing or playing shows. It just, nothing really happened. And I'd sort of, I think I was like 24, 25, and I sort of was like, maybe it's time to give up or not play music or like try to find a job that's more sustaining. And because I was working at like a call center in Portland, and it was like, sort of like not like a depressing kind of life, but I was like doing very like recharging people's prepaid calling cards. And because of my voice, everyone thought I was a woman on the phone, which is fine. So I moved to New York with my best friend Danny, and I was like, well, maybe it didn't work out for me music, but I'll go to New York and like just try to find like a job that isn't recharging people's prepaid calling cards. I became friends with the fellow that sat next to me at work, and that guy was Alex Naidus, and he had never played bass guitar before. And I sort of invited him over to play some songs I wrote, and he was like, I've never played bass. I'm like, it's kind of like guitar. You just like use one finger instead of a bunch. And I had also invited, I had befriended this wonderful woman, Peggy Wang. Like our musical interests like overlap so much, and she taught me about bands I didn't know about, and vice versa. It was like a two-way interchange of like, oh, have you heard this? I'm like, no, I've never heard this, like this Swedish band or whatever. And so it's wonderful to have that confluence of creativity that up to that point in my life, I just never met other people that were into like the sort of kind of obscure like bands and music that I love so much. So yeah, we formed, and our first show was at Peggy's birthday party. I'm like the boss that doesn't want to be the boss, but is the boss. And it's like, it's been a difficult idea for me to wrap my head around. I've always wanted to sort of hide behind a band name and a sort of collective identity that isn't my own. Like, I really believe in the pains of being pure at heart. I feel it's this idealized vision of what pop music can be, at least to me. But I don't believe in, Kip Berman. Like I wouldn't want to go see Kip Berman play music. I know Kip Berman. I wake up with Kip Berman. I take a shower with Kip Berman all the time, and I'm just like, yeah, Kip Berman's all right. But it's like he's like a sort of human being that isn't that exceptional at anything. But to me, the pains of being pure at heart are this ideal, this something that's like larger than life. It's like Gem and the Holograms, or it's like, yeah, it's almost a too good to be true idea of what I want to be. It's like, it's what I want to be but can't be. I remember when we were starting, like one of the bands we shared a practice space at that time with was this great band called Crystal Stilts. And they were going on tour in Europe, and they were super cool and a really good band. And I just like kind of looked at them and thought, oh, that'd be so amazing to have that happen to us, or like have, but it inspired us to have to work harder. It's like we have to be a better band, we have to write better songs and be good enough to hopefully have those opportunities. We admired it so much, so it just forced us to work harder, but it wasn't out of like any kind of like, oh, we should be the famous band, not them. It was more like, we want to have those experiences too, and we admire their sound and their songwriting and their talent so much. But it isn't competitive. I want the artists that I love to succeed, and I don't feel like there's a competition. I think there's not enough opportunity for music to be heard, but I want all of the music that's deserving to be heard. So I always try to be supportive of new bands and new products as much as I can be, and I don't know if I have any like wisdom to pass along, but just try to write good songs and don't be too much of a jerk. So I think in the modern world there is this strange expectation, and it comes from people approaching music from maybe more financially secure middle-class backgrounds, that they want to be able to perpetuate and sustain a stable middle-class life through music. And there's a sense like, well, if I just apply the values of this background, which is like, you know, however they perceive it, but just if I work really hard, I, you know, do all the quote unquote right things, that somehow there will be this level of financially sustaining success. And I think that's misleading. I think there's so many talented artists I've seen that never get the chance for their music to be heard the way it ought to be heard. But I think so much of it is just chance and fortune and lining up with what, and like the thing that you love doing, lining up with what the culture of that moment is interested in. I think a lot of people respond to different songs of ours. I think the one that always kind of gives me goosebumps when we play it live, though, is a song that was off an EP we did between our first album and our second album, and it's called Higher Than the Stars. And even though like the recording of it isn't like that great, the song itself just feels, it just kind of gives me, it gives me chills when we still play it, and like I think about it, and it's sort of this idea of like you can't go back again, and sort of like these like experiences you have in adolescence that sort of upset your entire balance, and like there isn't like a return to the state before. Like it's like human life is linear, and it's not. And when things upset everything you know before, it's not, you don't go back to before. It resonates through your life, and it's like the consequences are profound and lasting. We're going to record a record in January with my friend and producer Andy Savers. He worked on our last album, Days of Abandon, and I thought it was cool. You know, so I was like, "Oh, this sounds like better than we could have done it by ourselves." Thanks, Andy. So and then we became really good friends through that process, which is cool. And so he's going to come over to New York. He lives in England, in January, and we're going over to my friend's studio. It used to be called House Under Magic, but now it's called Transmitter Park Studios, and that's like my best friend Danny, and I've like known him forever. And so we're gonna go over to his studio, and we're gonna record a new record, and you know, well, hopefully it'll be a global smash. And even if it isn't, it'll be really fun. You know. So.
Okay, you ready?
Sure. I feel like I have a really soft spot for Tori Amos. I think she's like a singular, incredible performer. Just like, I don't know if people really, I think she's like one of the greats ever. You know, Tori was like such a huge, like, put the CD in the CD player and just like let it go over and over again for me when I was like growing up. And so yeah, I don't know if it would make a good musical pairing, but I just love to see her play and get a chance to shake her hand and tell her that I admire her a lot. It's the internet thing where I just don't understand what people mean when they say things. Like they say things like, "I'm literally crying," or like, "Oh, I'm crying," or like I don't think people cry as much as they say they cry on the internet. And I believe people should be in tune with their emotions and be unafraid to express themselves. But I think there's this hyperbolic need to perform emotions that may not even be genuine. So I just think real emotions are great, but just don't like ratchet up the language of emotional intensity that may or may not exist. Just this year I've like gotten better at learning how to like program drums and stuff, and it's like partially because the guy that plays drums in our band like lives far away, so I'm like, well, if I want to do a demo, I have to really figure out how to do this myself. So yeah, I'd like to learn how to be better at recording music that sounds like real music. I'm very partial to New York City. I think it's this wonderful cosmopolitan place where people from all over the world come together and do creative projects and live in relative peace and harmony. I think there's something extremely exciting about the diversity and how that's shaped the dynamic of the city that I live in. And from like the food and the people you meet and like the kinds of art that's made, and like it's like it's a really great place. But I'm sure there's other really great places, and I'm just maybe repping New York because I'm happy to live here. Don't compare yourself to other bands, and also like the more cynical side of that is like the sooner it happens, the sooner it's over. Where it's like the quick ascent isn't always like at the end of the day the best thing for people who want to continue making music. And it's like sort of like once you get to the top, there's like nowhere to go. So.